Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
This is our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like.
Pod in the bottom. Check it out. Description. Subscribe.
Yeah, go get that podcast. All right, John, time to talk about Urban Meyer, who you and I have been talking about for maybe a month or two now, about becoming an NFL head coach this year. And the Chargers we've talked about the Chargers should hire him, and the Jags are in the mix now. Maybe he'd like to be in Florida. Mike Florio wrote on Tuesday that he would want somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million a year. Rap Sheet said that's not true. Florio said Rap Sheet doesn't know. I think he would command.
Did he call it like state-run media?
Yeah,
trying to hold
he got
down?
very personal. 12. If you asked me what would it take to get Urban, I would start the bidding at $10 million.
Yeah.
So $12 million is absolutely what Urban should say he wants. Keep in mind, Urban Meyer doesn't look at himself like a guy that's never coached in the NFL. Urban Meyer views himself, and I think the league views Urban Meyer, and I think football views Urban Meyer as really great football coach. And that's what he expects to be paid as.
Well, if Urban had taken the Texas job, you see Sark's making like 5.2. What would you guess if Urban had accepted the Texas job, his salary would have been?
$10 million a year, something like that.
Yeah. I would have too. And I asked you earlier today, I said, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, didn't Rule get like 7 years, 60, or it was like 6? And you said he makes $9 million a year. Matt Rule, who had one good year at Baylor, and he won at Temple. A lot of people win at Temple, right? I mean, Temple's been a stepping stone job for a lot of people.
Adazio.
It's not like people go to to me, it's not San Jose State. Like, you can go to Temple and win 8-9 games, get NFL players. Honestly, it's got like a little Nevada, Fresno State feel to Philly. Like, you look at the history of the program, Bruce Arians, Todd Bowles, like they got some NFL people that have come through there. It's a little different because like a big city, right? It's not normal in New York City, Boston, like kind of a smaller school, but you go there to win. And he did. So Urban Meyer's resume compared to Matt Rule, who Matt Rule people thought like was a no-brainer, everyone wanted to hire him the last couple of years. I'd say Urban Meyer infinitely feels strong, but is way all caps. Like, it's just he's in a different world than Matt Rule in terms of resume, what he's accomplished. The other thing with Urban, it's like, yeah, he's never coached in the pros, but he ran like NFL teams, right? He had, NFL players. What he did at Florida was crazy, but then I think you go, well, he kind of started the tone that way, but all those teams are kind of like that. Then he went to Ohio State, remember, and he kind of ruffled some feathers because like we don't recruit as a conference like they do in the SEC. And I just typed in Chase Young to rivals. Chase Young was from Maryland. He was the 8th player nationally, the number one. Like, he was just start going kind of Pete Carroll style. Like, I'm going to approach Ohio State like Pete did at USC, like I do at Florida. It didn't happen. It's kind of a new age thing the last couple decades where I'm the number one program in the country. I can get anyone, whether it's LA, whether it's Boston, whether it's Florida. It doesn't. I'm at a premium program. I'm going to go get the player I want. Kind of like the NFL draft, except you have an unlimited amount of picks, right? If you're the Seattle Seahawks, they're a bad example because they draft late. But like the Miami Dolphins, if you're drafting 3, you get to pick whoever you want from whatever school, right? At number 3, whoever's left on the board. In college football, Urban was lucky at Ohio State, but he approached it kind of like the draft. I'm going to go after the best player. And he did.
Yeah.
And he got him.
The difference is in college.
And they've been good pros. Like, it's like he
That's right.
isolated
He's
the
done it
guys
with
that
NFL. That's right. It's not like some shticky thing that only works in college with.
I'd say both the times, like when you look back at Florida, I think it's almost undervalued. Like, damn, he had Carlos Dunlap. He had even the Ray McDonald's. Like, some of the guys that aren't maybe as famous as, like, I don't know, Percy Harvin or whoever. Even like a Riley Cooper.
Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most famous. Riley Cooper was kind of a nobody. He said the swear word or whatever. But it's just like, that's like his, 30th best player on his team is just a pro.
Yeah. It was an N-bomb.
Bad N-bomb, yeah.
That's right. That was the Eagles. He had a run there when some Florida guys were all over the map once they left Florida. But the Pouncies.
It was bad.
The Pouncies?
Pouncies, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean,
well, here's the other thing.
Who your guard or center? Oh, the Pouncey brothers?
The other thing is, like, first of all, that's a 365-day-a-year job.
College.
Yeah. Well, the accumulation of that talent.
Yeah.
But it's evidence that you can, to me, working with the highest level recruits is very similar in terms of just understanding in the NFL that you do have to value your workforce, right? You don't get to beat them down over the head. I mean, obviously he's a hard-nosed coach in the Saban, right? He has he drains his body. Like, he's hard on his guys. But to me, it only works it only works at big-time programs over a period of time, if you have the proper level of respect from your players, because these are guys that could have picked to go in. These are 5-star guys. They don't have to be there. In the end of the day, I mean, you do need Nick and you do need Urban, but they're going to the NFL with or without you, right? And so there's this balance of like having enough respect to the player, knowing how to treat the player so that you can coach him the way you want to coach him. Now, I heard from somebody who knows Urban that Urban wants to coach one more time, and that he wants that one of the attractive things about the NFL to him is that for him, I think he views it like he's got one more job for 5 years. And in college, you have to recruit. And when you recruit, the fact that you may not be there in 2 or 3 years is used against you if you may not be there in 2 or 3 years. And in the NFL, nobody cares if Urban is going to be gone after 5 years. In college, first of all, you have to lie to recruits if you know that in 3 years you're going to retire, but they're going to ask you, hey, the coach at Texas said you're leaving, or the coach at Florida said you're going to be leaving soon, or Saban told me you're going to be leaving soon. What's the Harbaugh told me you're
telling me Belichick and Pete Carroll at 69 years old don't need to do that to the guys they draft?
Nobody cares. Free agents don't care. Nobody cares how much longer you're going to be there. They just want to know how much the paycheck's going to be. Yeah. So that's another thing that's attractive to him, is not having to, do that recruiting game where he's pretending like he's not going to be 5 years and then done. So I think for me, the question is like, can the Chargers can Dean Spanos, can they pay him $12 million? I think the Jags job makes a lot of sense for him. I would imagine he's more comfortable living in Florida than he is in LA. Doesn't feel like a fit, but LA
I do wonder, and only he'd truly know this, because when you're recruiting guys, which he would have been recruiting, right? They would have been underclassmen when he was there. What's Ryan Day now on his third year? This is his second year. So he would have recruited Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields out of high school. If you could have sat with Urban Meyer in his office when they were both like in the fall in their senior year, because you don't recruit both of them, right? I mean, you're not going to get both.
Yeah.
Ideally, you just want to land the one. Who did you want? Like, on their board, he had one. That's the thing. Like, when you're at an Ohio State or a Florida, I remember being at Fresno State. We're like, well, we'll take the 17th guy that USC doesn't want. But at Ohio State, Bama, Clemson, like, they, as my buddy that works for Saban, we don't, like, players don't pick us. We choose them.
But I wonder, right? Did Fields choose Georgia? I mean, Fields obviously started at Georgia. So did he pick?
But there also might have been an element of, like, listen, you guys already have Joe Brady and Dwayne Haskins on the roster. They turned it down. But, like, those guys every year are on his recruiting board. Right. If they said, hey, coach, Justin Fields is interested in coming, I would imagine they had him ranked. Where was he ranked? Who did they? Because those guys are near the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, whatever. I'd be fascinated. And he knows that. Like, that's his one advantage. As I was talking on the phone with someone yesterday, Urban, way more than Rule, like, Urban has really been to all these guys' homes. Like, when Pete came in the league, he had recruited all the top guys. Maybe occasionally, a guy that wasn't as good in high school, he didn't sit down. But a lot of guys, like, and we see it, like, Najee Harris coming out. You think Urban Meyer talked to Najee Harris? Of course he did, right? Any guy that's in the top 100, Urban has talked with personally and watched
their high school film. Yep.
And then if you're in a major conference, think how many guys he played against.
Yeah.
You remember? I actually think Urban's most impressive team was that Ohio. It's almost like he didn't get enough credit when he went to Ohio State, and we didn't realize just how sweet he was recruiting. Because it was like he was a major underdog to Alabama, and then they kind of kicked their ass, and it was like, God, who's this big white defensive end? Who's this guy that doesn't have his jersey coming over his stomach? This running back? Who is this wide receiver? Michael, what? Can't guard me, Thomas? Remember that team? It was just like, oh my God, and they were fucking loaded. And they were like, well, Oregon's got a sweet team, they'll hang, and they kicked their ass. And looking back, it's like, yeah, their entire roster was full of first rounders that have aged pretty well in the NFL.
To some, right? Duron. Well, that was Duron Lee, right? Is that how you said that guy's name?
Yeah. And he
Eli Apple, Von Bell, Joey Bosa,
Zeke. They had Taylor Decker.
Curtis Samuel,
Was Michael Thomas on that team?
Michael Thomas, Devin Smith.
I mean, that's and those guys at the time, they weren't going in the league. They were sophomores. So it was like, these guys are young, and it was like, they're young, but they are. That'd be like looking back on more like college basketball. It happens a lot when guys can just go whenever. Some of those Kentucky teams, like with freshmen, that would be the equivalent. But all those guys had to come back.
Yeah, I'd hire him.
I would too. Well, I think if he wants a job, he's going to be in the
I'm
winning. He's going to come, guy.
Yeah, well, you made the point to me before we started recording. Is like if he's going to do it this year, makes sense. If the Chargers job with Herbert, the Jags job with the #1 overall pick, it doesn't make sense to not take a job right now.
I think those two jobs for him make a lot of sense.
Yeah.